Welcome to Social Dynamics. I'm Sarah Stockham, and today I'm going to be talking with my really good friend, Christy Jones. And Christy, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Wow. Well, as I was thinking about that, what I will say is that I've really just been guided to be a teacher, right? In many ways in life that I feel my whole life I've been teaching. And currently I get to teach a lot of health, mindfulness, and really the understanding of spirituality, which has been so fun to understand. So often we think that spirituality is something, not understandable.
So true.
But it's really the understanding of raising our vibration, raising our energy. And so I feel like really recently I've been a teacher of energy.
Very true.
And
yes.
helping understand that that's who we are and being able to work with the universal laws. And that's been my journey, is teaching and learning and loving people.
Oh, Christy, that so describes who you are. And I also know you to be somebody who's incredibly enthusiastic, that you definitely spend time working on your own inner energy and what's taking place inside of you. And I also know you to be somebody who is decisive, somebody who looks at things and comes to a decision that is authentically aligned internally for you. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about what is that?
What is being authentically or enthusiastically decisive?
Yes.
And, as I've been practicing learning to listen inside, what's come to me is that is something that people could benefit, learning that ability to be enthusiastically decisive. That we actually make decisions all the time. It comes down to making decisions. But we make a decision to get up in the morning. We make a decision to answer the phone or not.
Yes.
We make a decision, what we're eating for breakfast. And so often these decisions that we're making, we can have a lot of resistance. And when we're talking about energy, we're learning that everything is energy. So when we can be in our day with enthusiasm, being able to approach every aspect of our life, which are mostly decisions,
Yes, very true.
with enthusiasm, we're going to have a whole different level of energy.
I love that. Yes, yes. So as we're talking about being authentically and enthusiastically decisive, I'm thinking that there's going to be an opposite side to that as well.
Yes,
And
yes.
sometimes I know that for myself, before I can figure out what I want, knowing what I don't want is really helpful.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you can kind of speak a little bit into that in terms of what's the opposite of that?
Yeah, and really what I've seen in working with children and adults is that there's this feeling of self-doubt.
Yes.
And that's so common, that gets in our way from really achieving what we want in life, to feeling these higher energies, to feeling enthusiastic, to feeling like we can make decisions and move forward in life. And so, that feeling of self-doubt, I've really had to take time to really understand, what does that mean? What does self-doubt mean really in a spiritual aspect of it, right? And, the definition that's really resonated with my heart and soul is that self-doubt is a false belief, right? It's a false belief that somebody has taken on to believe that there's something missing or lacking in who they are. There's something wrong with them. And they will live in that false belief, limiting themselves in all aspects of life, and what they think they can do in life, who they think they are, their self-identity, what they're able to make financially, and the opportunities that they'll allow themselves to take. Yeah.
That is so true. And as I think about the people that I interact with, and just observing without judgment how people are making decisions, I just wonder why self-doubt is so pervasive, because truly I see it all across the board, that there are very few people who are Christy Joneses who are enthusiastically decisive.
There will be more, right? That is what we get to do, is we get to make
Yes.
a world of people that really get to feel, empowered, that get to feel authentically themselves.
Yes.
And, before we go to that, one of the things I wanted to touch on is, if we look at one of the other aspects of the opposite of self-doubt, is looking at the opposite would really be self-knowing, right? That we know ourselves. To be enthusiastically decisive, we actually have to know ourselves. And so knowing ourselves, there's this profound truth, this knowingness that we have, that we are the essence of love. And when I just say that, I just want to say that, like, what do you feel right? When we just say self-knowing is that profound truth that we are the essence of love. And just saying this and being here with you, I just feel that radiate in my heart. It's something that is a truth, yet so many people have not been taught that.
Nor have they experienced it.
And I think that's really at the root of so much of what we experience in society.
Yes.
Yeah. And so to get back, your other question was...
Sure.
We can hop back onto that. You
Absolutely,
remind me your
yes.
other question.
So why are so many people experiencing self-doubt? Why is it so pervasive in our society?
Yeah, and I think I was starting to answer that is that it's that false belief, that they're living in this false belief of not knowing who they truly are. And it can show up in many ways, but there's 4 main ways that self-doubt can show up. And one is this belief that we have to take on other people's emotions, that we are responsible for other people's emotions. The second one is that we will live in labels that were given to us as children. We might even give ourselves some labels, or society may give us labels that we take on and we own them as ourselves. And once again, that's a false belief. The third one is that we may have experienced traumas in life, and we haven't learned how to process those traumas, and so they will lead to those false beliefs that are running in the background of everything we do. And the fourth one is that we may experience some type of something physical that makes us feel doubt in ourselves, like we're not capable in some way. You know, we're too short, we're too tall, we're too heavy, we're too light. You know, it's something physically that we will focus on, and it will cause that feeling.
I love that you have all 4 of these. And Christy, I would love to make a series of interviews out of this if you're willing to do that.
Oh, I would love to.
And
yeah.
so let's just go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the self-doubt part of it and the childhood experiences, or how it is that we come to that space of not listening internally to what we know the answers. Because there are times that my stomach absolutely tells me, my gut tells me,
Yes.
right? That intuitive gut, this is the right step. And yet I still sit back and go, is this really the right step, right?
Yeah.
Even though I know that it is. So
Yes.
what's underlying that?
And what's wonderful is you have the ability to check in with yourself and check in with your gut, and that's something you've developed. Right?
Yes, definitely.
And so that first one of really taking on, as we're talking about childhood, it's taking on other people's emotions, feeling responsible for other people's emotions. This is so key, and I don't think it's talked about a lot.
It is not. And I know that there are people who would call themselves, let's say, an empath. And my preference of that is to not call somebody an empath, but actually to call a sensitive, allow them to choose that, how they want to see it. But in part, the reason is if I am an empath, I'm empathic, I'm sitting at the end of a fire hose and I am taking in absolutely everything that's going on around me.
Okay.
If I'm a sensitive, I now move into a place of having choices. I'm seeing all the energy around me, but I'm getting the opportunity to dance with what I want.
Yes.
And so I think that part of what you are talking about here is that not having to take on other people's emotions in order to make them feel better, thinking that we can manipulate that.
Yes, absolutely. Here's the thing, we do not have to take on other people's emotions. And here's the shocking truth. It's actually impossible for our true self to take responsibility for someone else's emotions.
Say that again, because that's just so powerful, Christy.
It is impossible for our true self to take responsibility for someone else's emotions. And so some people might be like, what?
Right, that is a shocking
I've been
truth.
told my whole life that I'm responsible for other people's emotions.
Right.
That may be an experience that many people have had. But here's the thing, something has happened to us. We have taken on an identity that is not ours. And so I just want to say that again, that something has happened. We have taken on an identity that is not ours. And so there's 4 parts to understanding this. This next step is that identity that we've taken on is the ego, right? And so there's, I want to talk about the ego, our inner child, our green soul, and our blue soul. And you might be like, "What? We get colors today, right? We've got to bring some colors into this." But the ego, you might have heard it in many different ways, But the ego is simply this stored information, this stored data, this life experience that we are just so good at memorizing every single aspect of life. And the ego has one, the ego's biggest concern is losing something, is a fear of losing. And so it's really there to try and protect us. And it's looking at, oh my gosh, what am I gonna lose? So I better avoid things. I better protect, right? And I better prevent. So it's looking through the lens. So if you imagine that you're looking through glasses with those to avoid, to prevent, and to protect in every situation, all of a sudden, life seems like self-doubt is going to show up because I've got to protect myself, right? I've got to avoid. And so often this, once again, comes into somebody wanting to make decisions with enthusiasm, and they're like, but this doesn't feel so good. And so we want to realize that this ego is not who we truly are. It is the stored information. It is not our truth. It is not our higher self. Now, let me move a little deeper to that second part of us, is that everybody has this inner child.
Everyone does.
Everyone, right? It might be new to some people, but we have this child that lives inside of us.
Yes.
And, if we imagine that, when you look at a baby, they're just so pure. They just radiate life. And that's really our inner child. It's just our I am. It's our pure, innocent self. It's almost like, water. It's just pure. And so what happens in life is that sometimes, many times, our ego will infect our inner child. It will take over. It will move on right into this place, and our inner child will assume the position of the ego. It will believe it's all the past experiences. It will believe that it's supposed to take on the emotions of others because they were told, you're responsible. If you don't clean your room, you hurt my feelings. If you don't listen to me, right? Now I'm disappointed in you. Right? So we've had experiences in life where we were told that our actions actually make other people feel bad and that it's our fault.
And then and that just moves into the subconscious in ways that we are not even watching the door, right? It's just going in, and we're taking it in, and this is how it's supposed to be. And so in this situation, I must act this way. And autopilot turns on because the subconscious just takes over based on stored data.
Yes.
Tell me more.
Yeah, and so what we're really learning is that we're not that stored data. And what happens if the inner child has taken that on as an identity, and we're living in, and I can say this because I lived there for many years and I was very good at it, right? I must say, is that what it turns into what we call the green soul. Now, a soul is actually an identity, right? It's a consciousness that has its own living expression, okay? And so we just give it a color to make it a little fun, but we actually have two souls. We have this green soul that is the inner child plus the ego that are become one, and it shows up as this belief that they are all these things, that they are their body, that their past experience, that they're traumas. And so from that place, that's really where people will live in that self-doubt, that feeling limited, feeling a lack of confidence. Now, here's the thing. We know it's not our true self, right? Our true self is our higher self, right? Is our connection to this universal intelligence, to God, however somebody wants to phrase it. And we call that our blue soul. That if we can get that, every single one of us is a sacred soul, born with purpose, born exactly on time, how we are meant to be. And so our ability, what we get the ability to do is to unplug. Just like when we take a break from technology, right? And we turn off our phone, we're not looking at it. We get outside in nature. We're learning to unplug the inner child by realizing that our biggest work is to realize that we have this inner child, and that this inner child is just pure awareness. And that by stepping back and realizing this is not our truth, we can start going through a process to connect our innocent self, that inner child, to our higher self, which is the true essence of love. It goes back to that self-knowing. Our self is the true essence of love, to connect with our higher self, this infinite intelligence.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just taking a moment here just to digest this. The idea that there is the inner child, the ego, the green soul, and then the blue soul.
Yeah.
And that the dance really can be one of unplugging.
Yeah.
And I do have a funny story to tell.
Okay, yes.
I was recently vacuuming, and I moved from one space to another, and I hit the switch to make the vacuum cleaner go. And it wasn't making any noise. It wasn't effective at all. It was there, but it wasn't doing anything.
Okay.
Because I had not plugged it in the next room. So when you talk about unplugging, that for me just instantly came up, this experience of me doing this, going, no, we're not getting anywhere.
Right.
But I love that also from the standpoint spiritually, that we can have a space where we can unplug, and yet that can still be there, right? The ego can still be there. I'm not going to...
It's going to be there. We get to observe it,
right,
and not take it on.
Right.
Oh, I see you.
Yes.
You know, I really encourage people to talk to
Yes.
themselves. I
Yes.
see you, ego.
Yes.
I get you. I know you're
Yes.
trying to protect me,
Yes.
but I know it's assuming. So when we
Yes.
assume the position of the higher self, when we assume the position of being this pure essence of love, right? No matter what's going on, we assume that. When we do that, we instantly connect to our higher self.
Yes.
Right? We look at ourselves through the eyes of unconditional love.
Yes.
From that place, we get to love that inner child. And it's from that place we get to love everybody around us. Because guess what? Everybody else is their innocent child.
Yes.
Right? And we have that opportunity to see people as their innocent child, as their higher self. And just imagine our world when we all do that.
Incredible.
When we look at everybody
Yes.
as the true essence of love.
Yes.
And I believe we have that opportunity to create that. And I believe that's what we're creating.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you as well. And so I would love for you to share just the concept, the idea of, you've talked about this, how can we interact and become more attuned with the tools of being able to live from the space of the blue soul, from the higher self. Is there a methodology? Is there some way of doing that?
It's so important because, you know, we can hear something and we can have a shift. But if we don't actually go through a process, we've got to understand that our brain and our mind have been running these neural pathways. Our brain has been running these neural pathways of this limited belief for many, many years. And so we need a process. And so I'm so honored to be the lead coach of a program that I just love called the Soul Journey, that the main focus is to nurture that inner child, to connect with our higher self, to have our own conversations with God, that we have that wisdom inside, that we can each get those answers when we learn, once again, to rewire our brain, to assume the position of our higher self, and to enjoy this journey of really knowing who we are. And that is something that I have found, you know, I've worked with many people privately, and then they will take that next level of going on the soul journey and transformation of what I get to see people break through in all different areas of life. You know, I'd say the biggest transformation is self-image. Right? When we can really connect to our inner child and assume that position of our higher self, then we are able to create in every aspect of our life. But until we can feel that connection inside, that peace inside, that love inside, right, it's going to reflect in other areas of our life in the ways that we don't want. And so it's really that self-identity developing in such a strength of that love, that unconditional love for who we are and this life journey that we're on. Yeah.
Christy Jones, I have loved this time with you. I look forward to our next installment of this series. And I encourage everyone to subscribe. And if you're interested more in the soul journey, there will be a link below. And thank you so much for being here for Social Dynamics.